Okay, Mr. Barre, thank you so much for having an interview with me. My name is Ekaterina. Today I will conduct an interview regarding the lawsuit happening currently. The lawsuit is, as far as I understand, is against Biden and Mayorkas. And let's start. Let's begin.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I look forward to discussing the lawsuit and answering the questions that many people in the Russian community, as well as plaintiffs and their family members, have been curious to know.
Yeah. Thank you so much for spending your time today with me. Okay. May I ask you to tell us about yourself and your professional background?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So again, like I said, my name is Abadir Barre. I'm an immigration attorney here in New York. And I got into immigration law because I'm an immigrant myself. My family and I immigrated from Somalia in the early 90s due to the civil war in my home country. And we sought political asylum. That's how we gained status here, and then got the green card and thereafter the citizenship. So I've been in immigration my whole life. My uncle used to do a lot of immigration services. I used to help him out. After college, I was a paralegal doing immigration law until I went to law school, got my law license, and started practicing immigration law. And I have my own firm here in Manhattan, where we primarily focus on immigration law. We do some civil rights law as well. And we do all aspects of immigration law, so family petitions, a little bit of employment, USCIS applications, citizenship, green card, waivers, immigration court, where all of our plaintiffs are in immigration court, first and foremost. And then what makes us uniquely different is we do federal litigation where we sue the federal government for immigration violations.
Thank you so much for your introduction. As far as I see from your story, you're also related to your story has a story of a successful story of the immigrant. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. Let's move to the next one. Could you please provide us with a brief description of the lawsuit?
Yes. So the lawsuit. The point of the lawsuit is to challenge the government's policy of detaining Russians that are seeking asylum at the southern border. So the government, CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, and ICE have a system for processing, asylum seekers that come to the southern border. Typically, they receive them, they process them, their name, their date of birth, they take their biographical documents, they do fingerprints, biometrics, and then they typically release them into wherever city that they're planning on to go to. Most people have family members or friends or some city that they will relocate to. And then they give them a piece of paper called the notice to appear, which tells them that they have to show up to immigration court once they relocate in their city. And that's happening to about 99% of most asylum seekers at the southern border. We're finding that for Russians, they are detaining them. Whether they.
Hey, yeah, I think something happened with the connection.
Yeah, with the connection, I lost you as well.
Yeah, I think you were talking about.
I can redo the whole answer.
Yeah, we're probably it's better to get back. Okay. Yeah. Once again, could you please provide us with a brief description of the lawsuit?
Yes. So the lawsuit is challenging the government's unlawful policy to detain Russian asylum seekers that are coming across the southern border. The government, which is Customs and Border Patrol and ICE, have a practice of how they handle asylum seekers that come across the border. And the far majority, about 99% of the time, they process and release the asylum seekers that come across the border. They take their biographical documents, they do the biometrics, the fingerprints, and then they give them a notice to appear that sends them to immigration court to do their case in immigration court when they relocate to whatever city that they're going to. Most people have a family or friend connection to, any city, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, you name it. But for Russians, as soon as they come in, they're detaining them no matter what, men, women, children, and they're keeping them detained while they do their case in immigration court. And oftentimes, even when they do request to be paroled, and they submit all the documents to show that, that they're not a threat to society, they have no criminal background, and they have a sponsor that's willing to take care of them, they're still being denied parole. So, it's clear that the government has a policy that's behind the scenes, right? It's not an open policy, but it's a policy behind the scenes. And the numbers show that there's thousands of Russians that are detained for no explanation other than they're Russian.
And could you please provide the reason why Russians are seeking for asylum in the United States?
Well, as everybody knows, the situation, the political situation in Russia is very tense these past couple of years, especially with the Russia-Ukraine war. There's been a lot more crackdowns politically, not even just against reporters and dissidents, regular Russian citizens that spoke out against the war or speak out about if they want more democracy or more freedoms. It's getting to be a situation where there's been a lot of arrests, a lot of threats, a lot of repression towards Russian citizens. So a lot of asylum seekers are fleeing the terrible situation in Russia, and they've spoken out. They've made social media posts. They've protested in some cases, and they fear for their life. And they have genuine asylum cases that would win if they were given a fair shot to be able to present their case while being free. But they can't go back. I mean, I've spoken to many of them. They know that if they go back, the Russian authorities will be waiting for them. They'll interrogate them. Why did they go to the United States? What did they say? What is their views against the Russian government? And they're going to be incarcerated. And in some cases, as you know, people are being incarcerated for 15, 20 years, very long sentences. So, that's why they're seeking asylum.
I see. Thank you so much for your response. Could you please tell me more about your clients, about the plaintiffs? Do they face any risks by taking this legal action?
That's a very common question where people are often afraid, right, of suing the government. And people are afraid for many reasons. One is the U.S. federal government is such a powerful entity. Secondly, people in their home country, if they're suing the government or challenging the government, there's almost always a consequence for doing such things. But here it's not. And the reason being is that we have a country where we have a judicial system where, it is common to sue the government. It is common to ask for redress for violations of people's civil rights. So what I tell people is actually this will make their situation better. And the fact that they're doing it all together strengthens their position because they're doing it in numbers, right? If one person brought a lawsuit and said, I feel discriminated against because I'm Russian, I've been detained, the judge maybe wouldn't take that very seriously and say, the government maybe is detaining you because they're doing extra background checks. But when you bring 30 people together, it makes everybody look closely and say, well, what's going on? So, in fact, it'll just make their situation stronger rather than causing more problems for them.
So to sum up, there is no risks of retaliation for this lawsuit, right?
Not at all, no.
Okay. And what will be the negative consequences if people are not going to do anything, if there is no lawsuit? What is the
Yes, so the consequence is that so the Russian detention policy, as we call it in the complaint, we've dubbed it a nickname, right? And we call it RDDS is what we've called it in the complaint, which stands for Russian deterrence detention scheme. So the goal of the government, federal government here, is to detain and deport Russians. And by doing that, they will deter other Russians from coming to the United States and seeking asylum. Because if you're in Russia, right, and you call somebody here in America and say, things are getting a little bit crazy for me here. I feel that I'm being persecuted. I'm gonna, flee to the United States. And somebody tells you, Ekaterina, if you come, you're gonna be detained for 8 months and then to be deported. You're not gonna want to come, right? I mean, no free person is gonna willingly submit themselves to prolonged detention when they're not a criminal, right? None of our clients have any criminal record. So, if they don't do anything, the policy will go as is planned, which is they'll be detained for several months. They're going to go to immigration court, and then they'll be deported. And the reason I say that is because the government also has detained them in certain jurisdictions, certain states, certain areas that have very, very low approval rates, right? So, for example, the courts in Louisiana have a 5% approval rate for asylum. In contrast, in New York, the approval rates are 70 or 75%. So the same case that you have, right, you have a 5% chance in Louisiana than you do in New York. And if the Russian detention policy was not in place, this is what would happen. The person would come in, they would present themselves, they'd be processed, and they would say, okay, where are you going? And the person might say, I'm going to Brooklyn, Brighton Beach, for example. They would move there, they'd come here, and their immigration court case would be right here in Federal Plaza in New York. And they'd have a 75% chance of getting that case approved. But because of this policy, they're being sent in detention centers in the South, in Louisiana, in Texas, right? And then you're detained. You have no opportunity to collect documents from your friends and family, to collect evidence, to really, prepare for your case, to get your testimony prepared. And then you have a judge that's going to give you a 2% or 5% chance. So you'll be deported. So if you sit and do nothing, their plan works in action.
And then let's go to the next question. What will be the consequence, the outcome, if the clients are deported back in Russia?
So great question. Yeah. So as we were saying, prior, many of our plaintiffs have strong asylum cases where they have proof that they've been persecuted, proof that that the authorities know who they are, that if they go back home, that they will be facing threats, detention, imprisonment, right, possible death. So if they go back, then certainly I believe a lot of them are going to face persecution to the point where they either will face long prison times or could get tortured and also killed. So it's really a life or death situation for them. We had one client, as we were doing the case, was transferred to New Jersey to be deported. And his family members came in and Ekaterina, the panic in his aunt's face, the just sheer panic that she was like, if he's deported, she was crying, she was panicked. He's gonna die, he's gonna get killed. But, it showed me, right, just the passion in her voice that he cannot be sent back to Russia. Like they have to do what they have to do, but there's no way they can get sent back. So I'm convinced that that if they go back, that they're all gonna have heavy consequences. Everything from the assault and beatings and detention all the way to death.
Yeah, it sounds awful. So right now we see a lot of Russians detained in immigration detention centers in the United States. And as far as you said earlier, most of them are detained in republic states, right? Which are not very friendly to immigration and to providing people with asylums. Do you think it's done on purpose, or it's just a consequence, or it's just coincidence? Yeah,
it's not coincidence. Like I said, I believe it's all part of their plan. They're not. They could send people to Colorado. They could send people to San Francisco. They could send people to detention centers here in New Jersey, but they're choosing very deep red states, very conservative jurisdictions, very states that have super low approval ratings, right? And judges are not nice. They're not open-minded. They're not actually looking to see what the case is about. Yeah, I think it's designed that way to purposely deter people, right? They're putting them in the worst detention facilities. We just got news that the detention city in Louisiana, one of them had a tuberculosis outbreak. One of the other detainees was caught in tuberculosis. And obviously, as you know, TB is very, very contagious. And they were in the center, in contact with her. And from what I understand, the prison officials knew about it and then only started to take action when the detainee got sick. So this is just all unacceptable, right? You're exposing innocent people to disease, to terrible conditions. Mind you, Ekaterina, none of them have criminal records. So imagine being detained, right?
Mm-hmm.
With never in your life, this is the first time you've had any
Yeah.
contact with authorities, any level of even have your be handcuffed, and now you are wearing prison uniform, being told when get up and eat for an indefinite period of time, and then being told that by guards saying things like, "We're going to send all of you Russians back." So it's not by accident, right? This is when the guards, when the judges, when the immigration prosecutors are all repeating the same thing. It's done by design.
I completely agree with what you said. So it looks like we have innocent people in pretty miserable conditions. Some of a disease outbreak is happening in one of the detention centers. They were opposing Russian government, who is definitely doing something wrong by killing innocent people in Ukraine. People decided to say something. Now they are afraid of being persecuted in Russia. They came to ask for asylum in the United States. They came to ask for help, and the consequence of asking is being detained for about a year, right?
Yes.
And at the same time, they are waiting for their final courts in detention centers. And in most cases, it is Texas or Louisiana, like as far as I already said, the Republic states, which are not in immigration friendly states.
Correct.
Got it. Let's move to our next topic.
Let me add one thing to that, Ekaterina, to show that this is not coincidental. So in this Russian case, I've seen something happen here that I've never seen happen anywhere else. So I had an attorney who, she was also Russian, and she deals with a lot of Russian clients. When she heard about this lawsuit, she contacted me, and she actually added one of her clients as a plaintiff. And she told me she had 2 cases that she did, represented two Russians, and she won both of their cases. And 2 separate ones. On the first one, after she won, the government said, after everything was agreed upon, the government said, we have to appeal the case. Even though the case went on, the judge agreed to grant asylum. The government said that, we believe all the evidence and the testimony, and we think that the applicant should be granted. And then so we have to reserve appeal. And the judge and the attorney was very surprised, and they both said, why are we holding the case for appeal if you agree? And the government attorney said, I have orders from up above, my superiors, to appeal every case. They said, even if the case is won? She said, yeah. And so never have I seen a case where somebody wins and it's not released. This person now has already won asylum, has status in the United States, and she's still detained. Unbelievable. I mean, it's one thing if your case is pending and they say to you, we're going to win, but after you've won, to be still held in detention is unconscionable. The second case was similar, where the woman won, and then she was married, and so her husband's case should have been added, but the government said, no, 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 we want to have this case separate. They never separate husband and wife in any other situation. If the husband and wife, if one of them win, they both win. So things like that I've never seen in any other types of challenges that I've done to the government, where somebody wins their case and the government is still saying, we're going to hang on to you. That's what I'm saying. It's not coincidental or accident.
So can I suggest that U.S. government is challenging winning asylum cases for Russian citizens?
Yes. Even when they win, they're challenging it. They're still holding on, saying we're going to appeal, and still wanting to keep them detained, which is unheard of. After you win, it's over. But to stay that after your win, I'm going to still hang on to your case, still appeal it, and still fight your freedom, that's unheard of.
It's happening only to Russian citizens?
Yeah, I've never seen it happen to anybody else. And when this attorney told me this, it was actually unbelievable to me. I was like, are you sure that, it went down like this? And she said, yeah, I have 2 of them that are not being released, that have won their asylum.
So what we are seeing is a real discrimination.
Yes, yeah.
And the Russian citizens who were seeking for asylum in the United States, because they were opposing the Russian government, they are victims of discrimination in immigration detention centers in the United States. The country which promotes diversity, the country which promotes freedom, the country which promotes equal rights for everyone.
Yes, unbelievable to hear, right? That they come to this country thinking that most of the Russian asylum seekers are pro-democracy, right? So they're coming to the beacon of democracy only to be detained and be mistreated, and their civil rights to be violated. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it's very hard to believe in that. So you said that as we mentioned earlier, that we're seeing seeing discrimination, and at the same time we have plaintiffs, we have the lawsuit, we can see refugees trying to fight for having equal chances for asylum, to have. It looks like the fighting is the only way to be seen, to be heard. It's as far as I see it right now. Okay, could you please tell me, so how does U.S. legal system ensure that individuals filing the lawsuit against the government agencies are protected? Are there any laws, regulations? So right now we have this case, we have this lawsuit. So you said that it's a normal practice, but maybe you have some more insight regarding that.
Yeah. So the good thing about, like, as you just mentioned now, of our, people can always fight for their rights. So, before this lawsuit, the Russians were they were the victims, right? They were being detained, they are being mistreated, they're being set up for deportation. When you enter this lawsuit, we are the initiators, we are the plaintiffs. So then now we have the sword, and we're the ones, and the government is on the defense, and they have to respond to a federal judge why they're detaining the Russians, why they're not allowing them to be paroled, why our allegations against them having a policy. Is it, why is the policy, is there a policy? And if so, if there's no policy, how is it coincidental that every Russian is being detained, right? So they are the ones now on the defense and have to respond and explain to a judge that their actions is lawful. So that's the beauty now of the mechanism of the legal system, where you can, in law school, they say to us that you can use the law as a shield to protect yourself, or a sword to kind of go after somebody. And so now, in this case, the Russian plaintiffs, they have the sword. And so they're, even though that they're detained, I'm outside on the outside here fighting for them, and I have the sword, and I'm the one, taking that action towards the government.
Got it. I think it's great to have you as their guard in this case.
Well, I'm honored to do it. Yeah, I told the Russians, to be honest with you, there's a lot of Russian attorneys, and Russians, typically go to Russian attorneys for immigration services. There's plenty of them here in New York City. So when they reached out to me and said, "No, you have experience with these types of cases. We've checked into your record. We've seen what you've done, and we'd like you to handle this case," I was very honored to be able to represent them and kind of really seeing their affidavits, seeing their letters, seeing what they've gone through. It's really angered me to see how they're being mistreated. And like you said, a lot of them are just pro-democracy asylum seekers. They got mistreated in Russia, and now they're here in America and being mistreated. It didn't sit well with me, and it really upset me.
Oh yes, you said that you already mentioned that there are many Russians who are seeking for Russian attorneys, lawyers, and you have 30 plaintiffs, right?
Correct. Yes, 30 plaintiffs.
So is it like all the people who are detained right now, or like do we have like approximate numbers how many Russians are detained in the United States?
We don't, but that's so the next part of this, the case was so as we have our sword, then we asked the government to produce the numbers, right? To produce what's called it's called administrative record, right? So they have, the government has documents. So if when the judge is going to ask them to produce their emails, their policy, their handbooks, and show, right, what's if this, what's behind this policy. And so they're going to, as we get into the hearing, they're going to have to produce how many Russians that they've actually detained.
And what challenges are your, let me ask it in a different way. So are there any problems, difficulties, challenges you are facing in this case?
Yeah, well, it's twofold as a challenges. One is the biggest challenge I would say is that time. So the point of this case is to get this case through and get folks released before their court hearings. Because in one aspect, I'm trying to get them released as soon as possible. And on the other side, the government is trying to get them deported as soon as possible. So this case is not challenging their deportation. It's challenging their detention. Do you understand? So while I'm trying to rush that through and have a judge say they can, their detention is unlawful, the government on the other hand is trying to push their deportation through. Do you understand? So one aspect is the time aspect, and they always have their family call me and say, how soon can we hear back? What's the next steps? Because they understand that time is against us. The other is that they're detained, right? So it's difficult to get a hold of them. They have to mail me stuff. I had 3 clients that were detained in California, and they wouldn't let them mail their documents. They would not let them. So we had to call the prison and say, why are you not let them release their documents? Then we finally were able to get their documents. So it's very difficult to be able to get direct contact with the clients because of their detention. And then there's big situations like I mentioned with tuberculosis outbreak. So these are the things that make it challenging to get the relief I want from my clients as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, there was a leak that there is some unofficial ban or some proclamation from POTUS regarding the 6 countries which should be mandatory detained once people are coming to the border asking for asylum. Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like they have, and that's what when we get filed, when we file the discovery, we're going to ask for the documents related to the countries that are banned, that have automatic detention, mandatory detention. And it looks like it's post-Soviet countries. We did a similar lawsuit like this for Uzbeks back in February of this year, and same thing was happening to them. It looked like all the Uzbeks were coming in were being detained while everybody else was being released. So now we know that this detention scheme is going, beyond Uzbeks. It's going to Russians and other countries in the region.
So you said that you already had a similar case in your past, and the plaintiffs were Uzbeks, right?
Uzbeks, correct, yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And what was the outcome of that case?
Yeah, most of them were released, and most of them were released fairly quickly, right? And some of them they held on to because the Uzbek case was a little bit different than the Russians, because there, after we got into the case and the government had to explain why they were detaining Uzbeks, their explanation was that they had the U.S. government had caught an Uzbek human smuggler in Istanbul that had ties, as they say, to ISIS. So then they said anybody that was Uzbek going through Istanbul had to go through an additional screening. So they were, to be safe rather than sorry, they were detaining all Uzbeks. But as we went on the case, you can't do an entire ban on an entire country based on one instance. And then it turned out that this person was detained anyways and was in custody. So it wasn't like this person had any contact or relations with the other plaintiffs. So most of them were released. A couple of them had sponsor issues, and a couple had actually like some background stuff that the government had to double check. But other than that, most of them were, after the challenging suit, they had filed a parole request. The government approved the parole request, and they were released.
Yeah, Abadir, I think something similar happened with Tajik people who were holding Russian citizenship, right?
Yeah.
They were also caught on the territory of the United States, and they also were somehow connected to ISIS, as far as I remember. So
yes.
Is it possible to say that this event triggered what is happening currently to Russian people in detentions?
It could be, and we'll find out once once the government has to officially give us their response. But I don't think so, because in the Uzbek case that made it different than the Russian case. The Uzbek case was, with the exception of 2 plaintiffs that were women, the rest were men, right? So they had this argument of men are just presumably more of a threat than women are. Typically, they are screened a little bit more tougher than women. But with our case, there's a lot of women. So where's your, explanation? Some of them are older. They have no criminality, no background. So I'm sure they're going to try to use that as an example to say, oh, this is why. But as we get deeper into the case, we'll see what type of responses they come back with.
So I am assuming that your strategy will be a little bit different, right? For the lawsuit related to Russian asylum seekers. Okay.
Yes.
I see. And could you please share the current status, the current stage of the lawsuit?
Yeah, so we filed it Monday, September 9th, and then after you file it, the next stage is to serve the government defendants. So our defendants were ICE, CBP, Department of Homeland, and the White House, President Biden, right? Because POTUS has come up with the shadow ban. So we served everybody. The only person that hasn't got served yet is the Attorney General. That's on the way. It should get served, I think, by Thursday, which is tomorrow. Yeah. So then we expect the government attorney to come into the case, and then the next step will be we'll start speaking to them about negotiating and seeing what they plan to do. Do they plan to release some plaintiffs that are the ones that have the most sympathetic issues like health or age, and then the next step I'll be filing a motion for an injunction, which then I'll be asking for proof of the policy, proof that why are they detaining. So they're really going to be on the defensive, and I intend to do that next Friday. So by this week or early Monday, I should have the government attorney discussions as soon as they enter that notice, and then by next week I'll be filing my next motion.
Okay, I got it. And could you please tell me what will be the successful outcome for this lawsuit?
Great question. So there's actually two objectives for this lawsuit. My main and first objective is to release all the plaintiffs, right? That's what they all came on this lawsuit for. That's their hopes, to be released as soon as possible. So I'm going for that. But the other second objective is to lift this ban, right? So other Russians that come in are not subjected to this unlawful policy, right? So we are fighting for the 30 plaintiffs, but we're also fighting against the policy that even put them in this position. So that's the both of the objectives. What seems to happen is the government will release many, if not all, the plaintiffs, and then it's called. Then they say that the case is moot, which means that they'll tell the judge, all the plaintiffs are released, so this case is over, right? And so that's a way of them to get rid of the case, but then still keep their policy, right? They'll give us the plaintiffs, but they'll keep the policy. So then it turns into a legal battle. But I was telling the group before we started, if we get all of them or nearly all of them released, that I'll be very happy with that goal. But the other part of fighting the policy, I'm now in talks with the ACLU because they're really good at staying on a case and fighting the legalities of the case and saying that it's an unfair policy, and then because that fight will take on much longer. You understand, like fighting the policy as a legal matter could be like months and months and months of battling. But these folks need to get out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree with this. I also heard that there is a second wave of the plaintiffs who are getting prepared. They are looking how this lawsuit is developing. So if this lawsuit is going to be successful, we have plaintiffs released. Are you going to fight for the next wave? Are you going to represent them as well?
Yeah, I would be happy to, if this goes well and nearly all of them are released, and then they'll say another 30 or 40 or whatever want to challenge their detention as well, then I will. And then actually it'll strengthen it because it'll continue to show that this policy is ongoing, right? I mean, what's the government's response going to be if I file a suit for 30 people, we get them released, and then a few weeks later we come back with another 50. And they're in the same position as the previous 30, right? So at some point, the judges will say, this is deja vu. We're seeing the same case come over and over. So that's if that's the case, that we'll bring it. And then at that point, again, it'll be to challenge the policy and really lift that, because that's that would be my ultimate goal, is to get rid of the policy.
I agree. We have two goals. One goal is to release the 30 people, and the second goal is to remove the ban, to remove the policy. I agree. And let me see. I think I asked most of the questions. Maybe you have something to share.
Yeah,
some advice. So what as we know that there's only 30 people who are involved in this lawsuit, and there are so many, like, we don't know, maybe there are thousands of people, of Russian refugees looking for asylum, detained in immigration centers in Louisiana. And they are scared. They're scared to seek for this legal protection. And do you have any advice what they can do right now?
Yeah. So first and foremost is that keep your spirit. So part of this policy is to break you down, is to make you feel hopeless, right? You're here, you're detained, you're in a miserable condition. And to the point where people generally break, and when they break, they just sign out. They say, what, just deport me. I don't care. I'm not even want to do my case, right? I've seen so many people just quit. So my biggest advice is, don't quit, right? Continue fighting for your case. Immigration in general is a fight. it's a fight. I mean, it's just, I always tell people, whether it gets you because it's so long, or it gets you because you get scrutinized by the government, or have a difficult time at your green card stage, or have a difficult time at your citizenship stage, some point, immigration, you feel the frustrations of our immigration system. It's hardly easy, it's hardly quick. So it takes a lot of patience and resolve to be able to finally get your end goal. They've traveled so far. They've come all the way through Mexico, right? They've spent their time, money, energy. And you're here. Don't quit. That's what I would tell them. And then, for the folks that are in this case, we're fighting. We're hopeful that we'll get you the relief that you're seeking. And the folks that are not in this case, watch this case closely, because it will change your attitude towards the American legal system, and you'll see, even if you are in the most vulnerable position, you can turn around and have your sword and be on the attack and really fight for yourself. So just telling them to stay hopeful and then don't quit. That's my advice to everybody.
Thank you so much. I think it's very important to stay, to believe, to believe that everything what is happening with you is going to end, and one day you will be free. One day you will be heard. One day you will be a human again.
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for answering my question. Thank you so much for fighting for this, because today it's very hard to be Russian. It's very hard to call yourself Russian and not to be ashamed of that. Yeah, we're living in this world where everyone is opposing. Right. Yeah, and someone needs to protect us.
Right. Yeah, and I understand. Like I've been through this immigration system. I filed lots of lawsuits against Trump's Muslim ban back in 2017 when he first became president, and he banned Somalia, my home country. And I wrote an article in the San Diego Union Tribune, and I said, because I came to this country in 1992, and I said, if I was here now, I wouldn't be allowed to get into the country because of this ban. So, he made it hard, like you said, hard to be, Somali back then. Everybody was, maybe you're a terrorist. Maybe, Trump is right. Same thing here now. It's hard to be a Russian, and it's not fair, right? You're having a hard time in your home country. Now you're having a hard time here. But I'm just reminding people that it could seem terrible, and it could seem, but it's temporary. It's temporary. This will pass, and you just have to be strong enough to weather the storm. And then when you get to the other side, it'll make you a lot stronger. And when they come out of this and they're free and they're doing their case in America and they win, they're gonna look back at this and they're gonna say, I can conquer anything. If they've gone through this is like the worst experience that somebody can have. I mean, I completely understand. They have no criminal record. Imagine having no record, never even seeing handcuffs, and to be detained. Like, if you can get through that, you will get through anything. So I just want them to be strong and get past this, and they'll see better days.
Yeah, definitely. Going through this, fighting for your rights, this is what makes you American at the end.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Abadir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.